We wanted to bring her to New York City to address TWU Local 100's membership. So without further ado, Kristine Mayle, Financial Secretary, Chicago Teachers Union. Good.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. All right, I've got a big task here. How do I get my 30,000 members ready for a strike? First, I want to say thank you for your work during Hurricane Sandy. My members were watching you closely and were in awe of what you did and how you got that system up and running so quick, so thank you. Now, while we aren't bound by the Taylor laws, we do have specific laws against just the Chicago Teachers Union. There's some laws, some state laws that are written that are targeted just at us. It only qualifies for unions that work in municipalities of over 500,000, so that's just Chicago. So we have specific education laws about us. We're limited about what we're allowed to talk about while we're striking and what we're allowed to strike about, but we're still allowed to strike. Thank goodness. Hopefully we can maintain that. I want to give you a little bit of history of the CTU. This year is actually our 75th anniversary. We started by a group of teachers in the 30s that started organizing against the banks and the mayor who was threatening public education. Unfortunately, not much has changed in Chicago or even in New York in the past 75 years. In the 60s, 70s, during the Civil Rights era, we saw a fight back with our substitute teachers, our African-American teachers that didn't have equal rights to the rest of our membership, and they led the fight. In the 80s, we had a very strong membership. We went on about a dozen strikes. We had a very strong leader in Jackie Vaughn, and we had a militant, organized union. And from that, in the 90s, we had a series of strong contracts. Life was pretty good. We went to our classrooms, we taught our students. Nobody really bothered us. We got our raises. They weren't huge, but they were still raises every year, and we basically had labor peace. The problem with labor peace, though, is that it lulls you into a sense of complacency. So in the 90s, in the end of the 90s, what we started to see was our union turned into a service union, where instead of talking to one another and organizing our members, you would call downtown, call the union office and say, my principal's bothering me, file a grievance, and we would just take care of it for them. No member activity, no member engagement, and people started losing interest in our union. In the 2000s came school reform. You've heard about this in terms of No Child Left Behind. You've seen it here as public schools have turned into charter schools. We saw it in Chicago first with what they called the Mid-South Plan, and basically they took a small African-American neighborhood on the south side and started demolishing their schools. They closed them down one by one and started replacing them with private-owned charter schools. It was successful. There wasn't much of a fight back, either from the union or from the community members. So they tried again, and they invented this plan called Renaissance 2010, where they had 100 schools they wanted to close and privatize within 5 or 6 years. And they were successful. We currently have about 140 of our 600-plus schools are now charter schools. They have a goal to privatize a third of our schools in the city. What we saw was private business people coming in to run our schools. I'm not talking just the school board, which is appointed by the mayor and completely run by business people, billionaires with a B. Billionaires. The owner of the Hyatt hotels is on our Board of Education. But in our schools, what we started to see was this new program called the Broad Fellowship, where they started replacing our experienced principals that had been union members and had been teachers and knew how to deal with students. They replaced them with business people. They gave them a quick little degree program. So now our bosses on our sites, in our work sites, are people that have never taught children before. They don't know how a school runs. They don't know how it works. Obviously, our members are upset. We're being bullied by these principals that don't know anything about education. We're being bossed around about standardized testing and how to teach by people that don't know what they're doing. this privatization movement is all about doing education on the cheap. Don't be fooled. Race to the top, no child left behind. This is about privatizing our schools and making it cheap. During this time, our union wasn't really fighting back, though, right? Because we were lulled into complacency. We had this nice service union going, and all of a sudden, these attacks started coming, and we would call the union for help, and nothing would be done. In 2006, my school was slated for closure. What they did was they cut off our buses, so my students couldn't get to us. They opened a charter school down the block, promised the kids they would get computers if they went to school there. There never were any computers. So they took all the membership of all the students out of my school and then came after us and said that we were under-enrolled and we needed to close. So they closed us down, and the very next year they put a charter school in our building. But through this process, I met a group of people that this had happened to throughout the city. Different parts of the city, through this Renaissance 2010 plan, they'd been closing dozens of schools. And we got a small core group of people that wanted to fight back. It seemed hopeless at the time. It really did. When I called the union for help when they closed my school, they said, get your resume together. That was their advice to me. That was their advice to me, not fight back. I said, what do we do? Can I go to a closing hearing? Just get your resume together. That's what they told me. So I met this group of people, and we started studying. We read The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, I'm sorry. We read about the TWU. We read about TDU. And we learned about how people took back the power of their unions. We started off, we didn't want to take office. We just wanted to push the union in the right direction. We wanted to form a democratic union with an organizing model. Those were our main goals. Through our organizing, we actually won office. We didn't think it would happen, but we did. And we did that. It was real basic organizing. We got out into the field and we talked to people. We listened to what their concerns were, and we tried to find solutions to solve it. We looked back at other unions and how they had solved problems, and we moved forward. And that's really all we did. We took action and started listening to people. So when we took office in 2010, in July of 2010, the very next week after we took office, the school board came to us and gave us a choice. Either lose your 4% raise for this year, or 2,000 of your members are going to be fired. Right off the gates, right out of the gates, the first week we're in office. Right after that, we got our mayor, our charming mayor, Mr. Rahm Emanuel, took office and came out after us right away. We invited him, we invited all the candidates to talk about possible endorsements. We knew we wouldn't endorse him, but we extended the courtesy. And he came in and spoke to a group of our members and lectured us and pounded his fist on the desk and basically told us that he was going to try to kill us. He thought he could. A lot of our members thought that he could. So we knew coming in, right when we took membership, we needed to take control of our union and we needed to start moving things in the right direction. First step, we wanted to get information to our members. We changed the website and got it to be functional and full of information. We started e-blasting members, giving email blasts of information that what was going on and what the real problems were. We started a text message blast system. And then we provided trainings for our delegates and also for our members. And this was where the real work started. We started having conversations with our memberships and providing them with the skills to be the organizers out on the field. We knew we had to be strike ready. Our contract was expiring this past July, and we had a year and a half to get ready. If you had asked us the day we took office if we thought we could have done that in a year and a half, most people would have said no. I personally didn't think we could pull it off. But it was a coordinated effort of organizing with individual members and shifting the focus of the union. That organizing model was the key. We knew we had to be strike ready, and so we looked at the past and saw how those past leaders had done it back in the 80s, and we adapted. So we had this structure of district supervisors, is what we call them, and basically there's one district supervisor that looks over a bunch of different schools, and so it's all divided by the neighborhoods. We reinstated that system. Over the years, that had become a patronage system where you would come in, you would get 25 bucks and a sandwich, and you would make a couple phone calls if you wanted, but you didn't actually do any organizing. So we trained up this layer of leadership that we had existing, but nobody had been using. We established strike captains all across the city. This is a year and a half out when we weren't even saying the S word in public. We had those people build relationships with the different members and the leaders within the buildings. And we gave them some independence with a sense of responsibility. We told them what the goals were, and we discussed the goals with them and gave them our overall plan and let them go to it. We didn't manage from the top down. We knew that they knew how to reach their members in their buildings and in their areas. We also, as we started getting closer and realized when we started bargaining that things were not going to go well for us unless we fought back, we started doing a series of tests with our members to see where we were at. Because we knew that if we just took people out before they were ready, nothing was going to happen. It wasn't going to work for us. So we started with a small series of tests. First, we started with wear red on Friday. The first couple weeks, there was like one teacher in every building wearing a red t-shirt on Friday. A lot of people walking around mumbling, saying how stupid it was. But within a couple months, it became a thing. Everybody wore red on Fridays. People were taking pictures and sending it in to us, and we were putting it on our website. It did two purposes. One, it built unity in the building and let people know that they weren't alone. But two, the second part was actually the more important part. It gave us a sense of where our buildings were at. So those district supervisors that I talked about would call the school and say, how many people were wearing red? What percentage are you at? And it gave us a way of knowing how ready our membership was to do what they needed to do. We also started doing a whole bunch of marches and rallies of different sorts, different sizes. Every time there was a school board meeting, we'd try to have 100 people out there. Sometimes we did larger ones with a few thousand people. We joined up with our community partners that shared common goals. So we did a lot of work with our bus drivers union in Chicago. We had CTU and AFL-CIO and different locals that were all fighting for the working people of the city. And when they had rallies, we went to their rallies, and they came to ours. And we started to change the culture. Our members had always, one of our former presidents had said once, well, why do we keep doing these rallies? Our members never come. And they started to come as they started to understand what was going on, as we gave them more information. We broadened the issues. Instead of it just being about our raises and our health care and things like that, we brought in that this was about educational justice. This was about taking care of the poorest students in the city and getting them what they deserve. We have about 2/3 of our schools are on a track where we have summer school. It starts in August and it ends late, and our schools don't have air conditioning. So we brought up things like our students are trying to learn in schools without air conditioning. The school closures are making our kids cross gang boundaries. And we appealed to the broadest sense of our membership. Traditionally, some of our older members were more about the bread and butter issues, their raises, their pensions, things like that. But what we saw is our younger membership, and we have a lot of younger members, were more interested in that educational justice part. So we tried to have a broad message that appealed to all those different people. We started talking about tax increment financing, which you would think would be the most boring topic ever, but our members really got behind it because basically it was the rich people running the city stealing from our kids. They were taking tax dollars that should have gone to our schools and giving it to United Airlines. We started talking about the banks, Bank of America and Chase, and how they were destroying our schools by sitting on these boards that were appointing all these educational leaders that had no educational experience. And we started talking about tax breaks to the rich that were starving our schools. And then we started having honest discussions in our schools. When we started with this, people thought we were crazy in some places. Why are we talking about banks? We need to be talking about my salary. And through these discussions, people started to understand. We started petitions, which, if you're using an organizing model, petitions aren't so much about here's 10,000 signatures. It's about getting those contacts from people and having those one-on-one conversations as you're trying to get those signatures. So we sent our members out to get petitions in the neighborhoods. They did door knocking and told parents and told community members about the problems facing our schools so we could start getting the parents and the community on our side. We did a pre-strike poll, which was invaluable. We asked them just 3 simple questions. Do you have confidence in the way that the Chicago Public Schools are running the schools? The obvious answer, everybody said no. We asked people, is your job harder now than it was last year? And everybody said yes. And then we said, do you think that CPS is doing right by kids? And it was an overwhelming no. And this was a tool that we used to measure the readiness of our membership. In November, way before strike time, it was the first time we actually used the S word. We put out a flyer and we told our members to start saving. We don't have our own strike fund, but we asked people to start their individual strike funds, their own personal accounts. And that flyer, we had bargaining that day, and the boss had that flyer before our members even did. It was amazing. But it did 2 things. It sent a message to our members that, yes, this is a possibility and you need to start getting ready, but it also sent the boss a warning that our people are going to be ready to fight. One of the big hurdles that we had to overcome was a brand new state law that was made just for Chicago, where they said in order for us to go on strike, we needed 75% of our membership, not voters, 75% of our membership had to authorize a strike. It seemed like an impossible task at the time. And when our president actually agreed to the language of the law, we got a lot of pushback. And she had a very logical argument. If we can't get 75% of our people ready to go out on strike, we probably shouldn't be striking. So as we informed the members about this law and gave them the details, we started seeing spontaneous strike votes happening in the schools. Those district supervisors would be calling us and saying, King High School just voted 100% to authorize a strike. We're not even having an election. And they just started rolling in, and then somebody told the media, and it started getting reported on the media. So we took the opportunity to hold our own votes. And what we saw was that well over 75% of our members were ready to go. We charted those results. And this was 6 months before it was actually time to strike. We charted them. We had big, huge posters all over the office. And we marked off exactly where every single school was at. And if we saw a school that wasn't looking very good, we sent our organizing team out there to talk to them and to get them on board and let them see what the issues were. And what we saw was by the time we took the official strike authorization vote, over 90% of our members voted to authorize the strike. It's not like this happened like easily or quickly, or it was a targeted effort. We trained up our organizing department, and they trained up the members to become organizers also. We looked at groups that we knew were especially weak. Looking at your memberships, I see it's a common problem in unions. So we looked at our younger members, our first-year teachers that were untenured, that didn't have any job protections. We targeted them, and so we started having one-on-one phone calls with them. We had phone bankers that were organizers call all of them and see where they were at and explain the problems and explain the contract to them. We targeted our service professionals, our PSRPs. They're the teacher assistants and the clerks and the people that really run the schools. And traditionally, they don't like to strike as often as the teachers because they don't get paid as much. So we talked with them and explained the issues to them. And that's how we got this 90% vote. It wasn't just that we have an evil mayor and a lot of business people trying to kill us. It was a concerted effort talking to each and every one of our members. The question that they wanted me to answer today is our job done? Hell no. We're not even close. Yes, we've led a successful strike. We took 30,000 people out for 7 days. We shut down the loop. thousands of community members and parents join us on the picket lines. Everywhere you drove in the city, you saw people wearing red and supporting us. Anytime you drove by a school, you would just hear the beeping from the supporters everywhere, all over the city. But we're not done. We're not even close to done. We managed to win a small raise. We managed to keep merit pay out, which is an especially insidious thing where they wanted to pay us as teachers based on our students' test scores. Anybody that knows anything about education knows that students that live in poverty don't do as well on tests. It's just a basic correlation. So they were trying to take away our money that way. They imposed a new wellness program that our members are not very happy about. But what we're seeing now as we go back out to the schools is that people are feeling a little defeated. They came off this huge high of having everybody united and everybody out in the streets together and feeling the love from the community. And now they're back in their buildings, and these principals have gotten 10 times meaner. They're working twice as hard. They extended our school day. That was one of the things we weren't able to beat. So people are working a longer day and also a longer year. So we're not close to done. Right now the boss is actively trying to wear our members down. And so we have a lot of work to do. We are still organizing. We are still visiting all of our schools. We are still talking to our members. They're starting a round of school closures right now where they want to privatize a third of our schools in our city. The mayor's threatened to close as many as 200 of our schools this year alone.
This is a Democrat, right?
He's a Democrat. So we have a lot more work to do. And I'm not saying this is an easy job, but I think we can do it because people are starting to wake up. What we saw with the Occupy movement, what we're seeing with different unions starting to stand up, what we saw in Wisconsin, the fight back. But it's going to take a lot of work. So I hope that what we've done has inspired you as much as what you have done has inspired us. Honestly, our leadership would not be in power without learning the history of your union and the bold stands that you have taken in the past. And so we really hope that we can inspire you and the rest of the labor movement to keep fighting because we're all in this together. They're going to get us if we don't stick together. As we've heard today, they are coming after working people. They do not understand that once we all get united, they're not going to be able to get away with it anymore. So keep up the fight. Solidarity forever. Thank you.